She entered the grand hall with quiet grace, her silver hair gathered neatly at the back of her neck, a pearl pin glinting softly under the chandelier. Conversations paused for a fraction of a second, long enough for people to glance and whisper. A woman like her did not belong in that world of danger and diamonds, of young mistresses and men who ruled the city with blood on their hands. But she walked as if she owned every inch of the marble floor. He stood near the head of the table, tall, sharp-featured, blue eyes cold and unyielding. His suit, tailored to perfection, moved with him like a shadow. Every gesture carried command. When his gaze found her, the air shifted. It was not lust. It was recognition, possession, reverence disguised as power. Someone at the far end of the room chuckled under his breath. "The boss brought his grandmother to dinner," he muttered. The laughter spread quietly like smoke, until it didn't. The man in the charcoal suit turned slowly, his expression unreadable. He stepped forward, each movement measured. The laughter died one sound at a time, and then, in a voice that could freeze a storm, he said, "She is my wife." His tone did not rise, but it carried through the silence like a gunshot. And anyone who laughs again will never do it twice. No one spoke. The room had been claimed by something deeper than fear. It was respect, the kind that no one dared question. Later that night, as the party continued under a forced politeness, she stood by the window, watching the rain trace lines down the glass. He approached from behind, his reflection merging with hers. "You shouldn't have come tonight," he said quietly, removing his cufflinks. "I had to see what kind of world you rule," she replied, "and what kind of woman I've become to survive beside you." He rested his hand gently on her shoulder. "You're the only thing that keeps me human," he said. "Without you, I would burn this city to the ground and feel nothing." She turned to him, her voice low. "And with me?" "With you," he said. "I remember I still have something worth losing." Their marriage was something no one understood. She, a woman with stories written in wrinkles and grace. He, the man everyone feared. Yet when they were alone, power melted away. He poured her tea with the care of a man afraid to break what he loved. She read in silence, sometimes smiling when his footsteps echoed down the hall. Rumors spread that he had lost his mind, that she had bewitched him, that her age embarrassed him, but he never defended himself again. He didn't need to. Every time she entered a room, his men stood a little straighter, remembering the night their boss had declared war against ridicule. But peace never lasts long in a kingdom built on control. The whispers that once mocked her began to plot against her. Jealousy has a way of disguising itself as loyalty. One evening, as the moonlight washed over the courtyard, a glass of wine sat waiting at her place, ruby red, sweet, poison. She lifted it, unaware of the danger, and smiled at him across the table. "To another year together," she said. He smiled back, the corners of his mouth softening in rare warmth. She took a sip. The taste was strange, metallic, bitter beneath the sweetness. Her vision blurred. The room spun. He was on his feet before she fell. The chair crashed. His voice thundered. "Call the doctor, now!" But no one moved fast enough. The men froze, paralyzed by fear of his wrath. He lifted her in his arms, his suit soaked in spilled wine, and carried her out into the night as rain began to fall. Hours later, she lay pale and still under hospital light. He sat beside her, his face hollowed by rage. The city outside would wake to a different dawn, one ruled not by a man, but by vengeance. The streets whispered his name as bodies began to disappear. His blue eyes, once calm and composed, now burned like winter flames. No one dared to ask why. They all knew. Someone had tried to kill the woman who held the only part of his soul that still remembered love. When she opened her eyes days later, she found him asleep beside her bed, his hand still holding hers. "You didn't have to destroy the world for me," she whispered. He didn't wake, but his grip tightened as if even in sleep he could feel her leaving. The lines on her face softened into a smile. "My beautiful monster," she murmured. Outside the window, the rain began again. Gentle this time. Somewhere deep down, she knew he would never rest until he found who had done it. And whoever it was, they were already dead. There was something almost tragic in how much he loved her, how his youth and her years met halfway in the ruins of what they both had become. He had money, soldiers, empires. She had time. And time, she knew, was running out. She turned her head to look at him again. The man everyone feared. The man who had just burned half his kingdom to protect her. The man who now looked like a lost child. If you've ever loved someone who made the whole world tremble but still held you like you were fragile, tell me in the comments. Your words matter more than you think. And if you want to know how far this love will go, stay with us, subscribe, and help this story reach the people who still believe that even monsters can love. Because in the next moment, everything will change. The night after the hospital was too quiet, the kind of silence that breathes danger. He sat in his office, the dim light of a single lamp reflecting against the glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, veins tense, jaw locked. Outside, the rain fell harder. Inside, he was no longer a man. He was a storm waiting to happen. Reports from his men piled on the table. None of them dared to speak unless he asked a question. Finally, his voice cut through the room. "Who gave her that glass?" No one answered. The tension stretched thin until a man near the wall began to shake. "We don't know, sir. It was already there when dinner started." He rose slowly, walked around the table, and stopped behind him. "You don't know?" he said softly, almost kindly. "Then you're useless to me." The gunshot came like thunder. 1 second of sound, and silence again. The others didn't move. They had seen him angry before, but never like this. This time it was personal. This time it was about her. When he returned to the mansion that night, her favorite chair still had the book she was reading. He picked it up. The pages smelled faintly of her perfume. His fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of what he'd almost lost. He sat where she used to sit and whispered, "You once told me that love and war cannot live in the same heart. You were wrong. They can. They just destroy everything around them." Days passed. The city changed. People disappeared. His name echoed in dark alleys like a curse. Every move, every decision was for one purpose, to find who dared to harm her. And yet, when he walked into her hospital room, he left the monster outside. He became the man again, the one she loved, the one she tamed. She smiled faintly, her skin pale against the white sheets. "You look tired." "I haven't slept," he said. "I can't until I find who did it." Her hand reached for his. "If you keep chasing revenge, you'll lose yourself again." "I already did," he answered. "The day I thought I lost you." She looked at him quietly. There was no fear in her eyes, only sorrow. "When you were young, you wanted to own the world. Now you're old enough to know that love is the only thing you can't control." He lowered his head. "Then tell me what I should do." "Live," she said softly, "and let me be the reason you still can." The next evening, the doctor said she was recovering, but he knew better. Her strength wasn't what it used to be. Every breath was a reminder that time was her final enemy. Still, she insisted on returning home. "If death is coming," she said, Let it find me where I loved, not where I suffered." When she entered the mansion again, the guard stepped aside with quiet reverence. The place smelled of rain and power, and of her presence reclaiming it. She walked through the corridors, her fingers brushing along the polished. Everything about that house existed because of him, yet nothing inside it felt alive until she returned. At dinner, she sat beside him, the same chair, the same table, but this time no one dared to breathe too loud. The air was heavy with unspoken fear. She placed her hand over his. "You don't need to make them fear me," she said. "Let them respect me." He met her gaze. "They will, or they won't breathe." Her lips curved into a sad smile. "You'll never He exhaled, his tone softening. "Maybe I don't want to. You're the only thing that ever made me human." She didn't respond, just looked at him as if memorizing the lines of his face. She knew what he didn't. Monsters can love, but they never rest. Outside, a car stopped. Headlights cut through the rain. The guards moved quickly. Someone unexpected had come to the gates, someone from his past. He stood up slowly, his hand brushing against the gun under his jacket. She whispered, "Promise me you won't kill tonight." He looked down at her, eyes cold again. "I can't promise that." And as he walked toward the door, the echo of his footsteps filled the mansion, the rhythm of a man torn between love and blood. If this story has kept you on edge, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think he'll find waiting outside that gate. And if you want to see how far he'll go for the woman he calls his wife, subscribe and stay close. Your support helps us reach the first 100 souls who believe in stories like this. Because when the door opens, nothing will ever be the same again. The night after, the hospital was too quiet, the kind of silence that breathes danger. He sat in his office, the dim light of a single lamp reflecting against the glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, veins tense, jaw locked. Outside, the rain fell harder. Inside, he was no longer a man. He was a storm waiting to happen. Reports from his men piled on the table. None of them dared to speak unless he asked a question. Finally, his voice cut through the room. "Who gave her that glass?" No one answered. The tension stretched thin until a man near the wall began to shake. "We don't know, sir. It was already there when dinner started." He rose slowly, walked around the table, and stopped behind him. "You don't know," he said softly, almost kindly. "Then you're useless to me." The gunshot came like thunder. 1 second of sound, and silence again. The others didn't move. They had seen him angry before, but never like this. This time it was personal. This time it was about her. When he returned to the mansion that night, her favorite chair still had the book she was reading. He picked it up. The pages smelled faintly of her perfume. His fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of what he'd almost lost. He sat where she used to sit and whispered, "You once told me that love and war cannot live in the same heart. You were wrong. They can. They just destroy everything around them." Days passed. The city changed. People disappeared. His name echoed in dark alleys like a curse. Every move, every decision was for one purpose: to find who dared to harm her. And yet, when he walked into her hospital room, he left the monster outside. He became the man again, the one she loved, the one she tamed. She smiled faintly, her skin pale against the white sheets. "You look tired." "I haven't slept," he said. "I can't until I find who did it." Her hand reached for his. "If you keep chasing revenge, you'll lose yourself again." "I already did," he answered, "the day I thought I lost you." She looked at him quietly. There was no fear in her eyes, only sorrow. "When you were young, you wanted to own the world. Now you're old enough to know that love is the only thing you can't control." He lowered his head. "Then tell me what I should do." "Live," she said softly, "and let me be the reason you still can." The next evening, the doctor said she was recovering, but he knew better. Her strength wasn't what it used to be. Every breath was a reminder that time was her final enemy. Still, she insisted on returning home. "If death is coming," she said, "let it find me where I loved, not where I suffered." When she entered the mansion again, the guards stepped aside with quiet reverence. The place smelled of rain and power, and of her presence reclaiming it. She walked through the corridors, her fingers brushing along the polished wood. Everything about that house existed because of him, yet nothing inside it felt alive until she returned. At dinner, she sat beside him. The same chair, the same table, but this time, no one dared to breathe too loud. The air was heavy with unspoken fear. She placed her hand over his. "You don't need to make them fear me," she said. "Let them respect me." He met her gaze. "They will, or they won't breathe." Her lips curved into a sad smile. "You'll never change." He exhaled, his tone softening. "Maybe I don't want to. You're the only thing that ever made me human." She didn't respond, just looked at him as if memorizing the lines of his face. She knew what he didn't. Monsters can love, but they never rest. Outside, a car stopped. Headlights cut through the rain. The guards moved quickly. Someone unexpected had come to the gates, someone from his past. He stood up slowly, his hand brushing against the gun under his jacket. She whispered, "Promise me you won't kill tonight." He looked down at her, eyes cold again. "I can't promise that." And as he walked toward the door, the echo of his footsteps filled the mansion, the rhythm of a man torn between love and blood. If this story has kept you on edge, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think he'll find waiting outside that gate. And if you want to see how far he'll go for the woman he calls his wife, subscribe and stay close. Your support helps us reach the first 100 souls who believe in stories like this. Because when the door opens, nothing will ever be the same again. The mansion stood like a fortress against the storm, the iron gates glistening beneath the streetlights. He stepped into the night, coat collar up, his men surrounding him in silence. The sound of thunder rolled up, echoing. A black car waited, its engine off, windows fogged. He approached with hand brushing his eye. Never. The back door, a man soaked, older, thin, with the weary posture. "Frank, you should have stayed buried," he said quietly. "I buried you once, remember?" The stranger swallowed hard. "You need to listen to me. It's about her." That was enough for the guards to raise their guns. "You speak her name again," the boss warned, "and you'll never finish the sentence." But something in the man's eyes, desperation, not fear, made him pause. "She's in danger," the stranger whispered, "and it's not from outside. It's from inside your house." A long silence stretched. Only the rain spoke. Inside. He turned his head slightly toward the mansion, where faint light spilled from the windows. His heartbeat slowed, then quickened again, the way it always did before he killed a man. "Who?" he asked. "Someone close, someone you trust." The man hesitated. "Your second in command, Mateo." The name hit like a knife between the ribs. Mateo had been with him for 20 years. The man who'd sworn loyalty, who'd watched his back when everyone else ran. The stranger continued. "He's been taking money from the Russians. The poison wasn't meant to kill her. It was meant to weaken you. They wanted you to lose focus, to break." "Why tell me this?" the boss asked, voice low. "Because I owe her my life," the man said. 30 years ago, she hid me when the police were hunting me down. She saved me when she didn't even know my name." He stared at the man for a long time, the rain sliding down his face like tears he didn't allow himself to feel. Finally, he nodded to his men. "Bring him inside, no harm." As they walked back toward the mansion, lightning illuminated the walls, and for a second, it felt as if the whole world was warning him. He entered quietly, boots echoing on the marble floor. She was in the study, wrapped in a shawl, reading by the fire. When she saw his expression, she closed the book. "Something happened," she said. He sat across from her. "Tell me the truth. Did you know Mateo was planning something?" She froze. The flame crackled. "Mateo?" "Yes," he said. "He was supposed to protect you." Her voice lowered. There's something I didn't tell you. He leaned forward. Say it. She looked into the fire, unable to meet his eyes. Matteo came to me the night before the poisoning. He said I was the only one who could stop you from starting a war. He wanted to negotiate. He said if I left you, the Russians would back down. His jaw tightened. And what did you say? She looked up at him, eyes filled with both fear and pride. I said I'd rather die beside you than live without you. He stood, pacing, fists clenched. You should have told me. I was trying to protect you, she said. He turned sharply. No, you were trying to save me from becoming what I already am. The storm outside grew louder, lightning flashing through the glass. Shadows danced on the walls, and between them stood two people who loved each other too much for peace. He moved closer, his voice breaking through the thunder. If Matteo betrayed us, he won't live to see another sunrise. She rose slowly, stepping into his path. If you kill him, you'll lose what's left of you. He looked at her, really looked. The lines on her face, the wisdom in her eyes, the trembling hand that still dared to touch him. And for a moment, the monster inside him faltered. But then the sound came, footsteps in the hall, heavy, deliberate. A shadow paused at the door. Matteo. He stood there, rain dripping from his coat, eyes sharp and unrepentant. You found out, he said calmly. I wondered how long it would take. The boss's voice was a whisper. You poisoned her. I did what had to be done, Matteo replied. You were losing control, over her, over everything. The silence before the storm broke again. If this scene pulled you in, tell me what you think will happen next. Will he forgive or will he destroy? Your comments help us keep this story alive, and every new subscriber brings us closer to our first 100 souls who believe in love born from chaos. Because in the next heartbeat, someone will pull the trigger. For a long moment, no one spoke. The rain pressed against the windows like a heartbeat from another world, slow and relentless. Matteo stood at the doorway. The shadow of loyalty turned into betrayal, while the woman, pale and calm, stood between them. Step aside, Franco said quietly, his blue eyes fixed on Matteo like two shards of ice. No, she whispered, not this time. Matteo smirked, removing his gloves. She's the only one keeping you human. That's your weakness, boss. Everyone sees it, everyone knows it. Franco moved closer, the silence heavy as gunpowder. Weakness? His voice dropped. She's the only reason I haven't killed the entire city. The air between them trembled. She could feel it, the thin line between love and destruction. Franco, listen to me, she said, her voice trembling but steady. Killing him won't change what he did. It will only finish what he started. Matteo laughed, low and bitter. You think he listens to anyone when he's like this? He turned his gaze to her. You don't know him like I do. She looked at Matteo sadly. That's where you're wrong, she said softly. I know him better than he knows himself. Franco's gun was already drawn. The sound of the safety clicking off echoed like thunder. Matteo didn't move. Go ahead, he said. Pull the trigger. But once you do, you'll never be the man she loves again. That hit something deep inside him, a truth he couldn't escape. His finger trembled slightly against the trigger. Then she stepped forward, placing her frail hand over the barrel. Please, she said. If you do this, you'll lose everything that still makes you human. He looked at her. 68 years old, fragile, beautiful. The woman who had loved him long before power, long before blood. And in that moment he realized he couldn't let her see what he was about to become. He turned the gun away and lowered it slowly. But Matteo took that as weakness. In one swift move, Matteo reached for his own weapon. The gunfire came almost at the same time. One echo, two lives crossing paths. She screamed. Smoke filled the air. When the sound faded, Matteo lay on the floor, a dark pool spreading beneath him. Franco stood frozen, the gun still in his hand, the smell of cordite thick in the room. She knelt beside Matteo, tears cutting down her cheeks. Why did you do this? She whispered. Matteo's lips trembled. Because I loved him once too, he said weakly. But he changed. You both did. His hand fell limp, and the light in his eyes faded. Franco dropped the gun and stepped back, the weight of his actions crashing down. He betrayed us, he said, almost to himself. She looked up at him. And now you've lost him too. For a while, only the rain spoke again, soft and mournful. The fire in the hearth flickered weakly, as if it too was dying. She rose slowly and approached him. Her hands, though trembling, cupped his face. You've spent your life trying to control everything, but some things break no matter how tightly you hold them. He closed his eyes. He would have killed you. I was ready for that, she said, but I wasn't ready to lose the man I married. He opened his eyes, tears finally escaping, quiet, raw, unguarded. You haven't lost him, he said. He's just learning what hell feels like. He took her hand and kissed it, a gesture too gentle for the monster everyone else saw. I'll fix this, he whispered, for you. She shook her head. You can't fix what's already buried, Franco. You can only stop digging deeper. Outside, sirens began to wail, distant then closer. The world was coming for them as it always did. He looked at her, the lines of time and pain blending into something sacred. If they take me, he said, promise me you'll keep living. She smiled faintly. You're not the kind of man they take alive. The moment felt endless, two souls standing between love and ruin, between what they were and what they could never be again. If this part tore something inside you, tell us in the comments. Would you have forgiven him or walked away forever? And don't forget to subscribe. Every person who joins helps us grow this channel and reach those who still believe that even in darkness, love finds a way. Because when dawn comes, nothing will be the same. The night faded slowly into gray. The rain had stopped, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. In the grand mansion, the scent of smoke and gunpowder still lingered. Mateo's body had been taken away, and the men, loyal but terrified, avoided meeting Franco's eyes. He sat by the window, shirt half unbuttoned, staring at the first light of morning as if it were an enemy. His hands were stained, but not just with blood, with consequence. Behind him, she moved quietly, her presence as fragile as the dawn itself. You should sleep, she said softly. I can't. His voice was hoarse, stripped of its authority. I close my eyes and I see him. I see you. I see what I've done. She placed a hand on his shoulder, but he didn't turn. Then stop seeing it. Start feeling it. He finally faced her, and for the first time there was no steel in his eyes, only exhaustion. Feeling is what got me here. No, she said gently. Losing control of your soul did. The city was waking up. News had spread. Whispers of betrayal and blood in the house of the most feared man in the underworld. Every rival family waited, uncertain whether to attack or kneel. Franco stood adjusting his cuffs, forcing the mask back onto his face. They'll come for me, he said. For us? Then let them come, she answered. But don't give them the man you were last night. He walked toward the door, but her voice stopped him. Where are you going? To clean what's left of my world. She stepped in front of him. You can't build peace with the same hands that destroy it. He looked down at her, at the woman who had defied the years and the cruelty of his life, and for a fleeting moment his resolve faltered. You think I can still change? She smiled faintly. I wouldn't still be here if I didn't. For the rest of that day, the mansion felt like a grave. His men moved in silence, cleaning the traces of what had happened, erasing the evidence as if pretending could undo the past. In the afternoon, a black car arrived at the back entrance, 2 officers stepping out, not police but something worse, government agents. They wanted to talk. He met them in his office, his composure restored. You've had an incident, one of them said. A body, a witness, and rumors. We could make this disappear. For a price. Franco leaned back. Everything has a price. What's yours? Information, the man replied. Give us the name of the Russian who's been buying your loyalty. Franco smiled coldly. You think I sell loyalty? The agent hesitated. Then maybe she does. The air froze. Franco's voice dropped. Choose your next words very carefully. But the seed had been planted: doubt, paranoia, fear that even now someone might be using her to reach him. That night, she found him alone in the chapel on the edge of the estate. Candles burned low, their flames bending with the wind. He knelt before the altar, a man made of sin seeking something close to mercy. "I don't know how to pray," he said quietly, not turning to her. "But I remember you once told me that God listens even to monsters." She stepped closer, her voice a whisper. "He listens especially to monsters who finally kneel." He turned his head slightly. "Do you still believe he can forgive me?" "I believe forgiveness starts with the one you love most," she said. "And I already have." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he reached for her hand and she let him. The candlelight reflected in his eyes, softer now, almost human. "I'll protect you," he said, "no matter what happens." But as she looked at him, she knew the men outside were already plotting again. The walls of power never stop closing in. In the distance, the faint sound of sirens echoed again. He didn't flinch, but she did. "They're coming," she whispered. "Let them," he said. "If this is the price, I'll pay it." She shook her head. "No, Franco. This time, I'll pay it." Before he could ask what she meant, she kissed his hand, a goodbye disguised as devotion. Then she walked away, her step slow, steady, final. He watched her disappear down the corridor, her silhouette fading into the pale light of morning. Something inside him knew that when he saw her again, everything would be different. If this story has made your heart ache, tell us in the comments what you believe she's about to do, and subscribe. Your voice and your presence help this channel reach the first 100 believers in stories where love and tragedy walk hand in hand. Because when she opens that door, fate will walk in with her. She left the chapel without looking back, the corridor stretching long like a promise she could not keep. In her room, she closed the door and stood still, listening to the house breathe. The mansion had its own pulse, a rhythm of guards shifting, radios murmuring, secrets changing hands. She had lived long enough to know that homes built on power always asked for a sacrifice. On the vanity, a small tin box waited beneath a folded handkerchief. She opened it and stared at the old photograph inside. A younger man with hungry eyes and the trace of a smile, and herself beside him, already older, already certain. She slid the photograph into her shawl, then reached for a fountain pen and a plain sheet of paper. The ink flowed steady, unafraid. "If you're reading this, you've already made the right choice," the letter began. "You chose to live, even if it means living without me for a while." Her hands did not tremble. She had survived grief before. She could survive it again if it saved him. Outside, footsteps approached, then faded. She finished the letter with a date, folded it once, and sealed it with a single strip of tape. On the envelope, she wrote his name, not the name the city feared, the name she used when she first found him by the river, shivering and furious at the world. She changed her dress for something simple, the kind of fabric that could disappear in a crowd. In the mirror, she pressed color into her cheeks with a touch of rouge, not to look younger, but to look alive. She pinned her hair in a clean twist and slid the ring he had given her back onto her finger, pressing the gold as if it could remember for her when she forgot. Then she called the driver. "No escort," she said. "I'm visiting the church in the old quarter." The driver hesitated. She softened her voice, the way one speaks to frightened animals. "No escort," she repeated. "If they see me alone, they won't panic. If they panic, he will burn everything." The car moved like a confession through the waking city. Markets opened, metal shutters groaned, rainwater pooled in the cracks of the pavement. She watched faces through the window, the century etched into her own, reflecting back at her from the glass. She had not always been brave. She had learned to be. At the old quarter, she stepped out and told the driver to wait. The shop she entered smelled of old wood and lemons. Behind the counter, a woman looked up from a ledger. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then the shopkeeper nodded and led her to a door in the back. Stairs descended into a basement that had been many things across many years. A storeroom, a hiding place, a sanctuary. Two men were already there, suited but unremarkable, their eyes too attentive. They were not his men. They were the government agents who had come earlier, or others just like them. She did not flinch. "You wanted information," she said. "I'll give you something better. I'll give you peace." They exchanged a quick glance. "We're listening. You will pull your eyes from his house. You will leave his men alone. You will stop pressuring him from the outside while the wolves circle inside. You will give me 72 hours. And in return, in 72 hours, the Russians will be a rumor and nothing more." She paused. "And you will get what you always wanted but never could buy." The taller agent leaned in. "What is that?" "A man who owes you nothing," she said, "and therefore cannot be owned. You can't build an empire on a debt to the state, but you can prevent a war if the state steps aside." "That isn't an offer," he said. "It's a prayer." She smiled without softness. "It's a plan, and I've lived long enough to know the difference." Back in the car, she gave the driver a new address. The port. Ships leaving at first light. She had made calls the night before, the kind that cost favors one never gets back. She would send a message in a language her husband understood. Remove the board and the game ends. At the docks, fog hung low over the water. Men moved crates with quiet urgency. She walked among them and found what she had come for. A stenciled mark on a container no one was supposed to notice. A number repeated on manifests the public would never see. She touched cold steel as if it were bone. Inside, not guns, documents, accounts, routes, names, the ledger of a foreign threat feeding on his empire from within. She turned to the foreman. 3 trucks, no police, no questions." He scowled until she added a number on a scrap of paper. His scowl dissolved. By late afternoon, the trucks rolled into the side entrance of the mansion. His men bristled at the movement they hadn't ordered. She stepped down from the lead truck and lifted her chin. "Bring these to the study," she said. "Now." He found her there hours later, sleeves rolled, reading with a magnifying glass the records that could bleed a city. The fireplace was unlit, but the room felt warm with purpose. He closed the door behind him. "What did you do?" he asked. "What you wouldn't," she answered. "I used time against them." He walked to the table, skimming the sheets, his gaze sharpened. Routes, codes, bank trails that curved through shell companies like rivers through stone. It was all there, years of rot mapped with mathematical cruelty. "This is why they wanted you gone," she said. "Not because you're weak with me, because I make you patient, and patient men don't make mistakes." He met her eyes, a flicker of awe breaking through the fatigue. "You went alone." "I am not alone," she said. "You just forget sometimes." He placed both hands on the table, the weight of his body leaning toward her, toward the life she insisted he still possessed. "I can end this," he said, cleanly. "You can," she agreed, "but you must do it without fire." He almost laughed. "You married the wrong man for that." "I married a man who learned," she said. "And now you will show them." Says, they worked until nightfall, building a strike that looked nothing like war. Seizures instead of murders, disappearances of assets instead of bodies. He called 3 people, no more, and gave orders in sentences that left no room for interpretation. She wrote letters in her careful hand, each one a key placed into the right lock. When exhaustion finally reached them, he stood behind her chair and wrapped his arms around her shoulders. The scent of his cologne mixed with old paper and ink. "You saved my world," he murmured. "No," she said. "I reminded you it could be saved." He turned her chair gently, knelt, and pressed his forehead to her hands. The gesture did not belong to a king. It belonged to a man. She let her fingers rest in his hair, feeling the life under her touch, the heat of him. "Tell me," he said quietly, "what price did you pay for this?" He meant the trucks, the documents, the quiet permission from the state that had to exist for any of it to move so easily. She hesitated for the first time that day. It was a small silence, but it was enough. He lifted his head. "What did you trade?" She looked past him at the window, where the last line of daylight was dissolving into night. "I promised them something I cannot give." "What?" His voice was steady, but his eyes were not. 72 hours without blood. She breathed in, then out. "And your word that when this is done, you will leave." The room went still. He stood slowly, as if any quick motion could shatter what remained of him. "Leave what?" he asked, though they both knew. "This life," she said, "this throne." He took a step back, as if the floor had shifted under him. "You offered them my surrender. I offered them your future." Her voice did not rise. "The only one where you live long enough to be forgiven." He turned away, palms pressed to the table, shoulders drawn tight. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he faced her again, the storm back in his eyes. "I can give you the world," he said, "but not this." "If you keep the world," she answered, "you'll lose me." He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and took her face in his hands with a care that looked like prayer. "You are asking me to kill the only man I've ever been," he whispered. "I'm asking you to bury him," she said, "so another can rise." Outside, an engine rumbled to a stop. Headlights swept across the study walls. A door slammed. Footsteps hurried down the hall. He did not release her. "Who is that?" She listened. The pace, the weight, the hush that followed. She recognized it. "Someone who doesn't knock," she said. "Someone who believes he still belongs here." The handle turned. The door opened. A figure stepped into the lamplight carrying a single object that could either save them or end them both. If this moment had your chest tight, tell us in the comments what you believe she traded for those 72 hours and who just walked in. Your voice helps guide where we take this story next. And if you're feeling the tension and want more, subscribe and help us reach our first 100 supporters who believe love can still outsmart violence. Because when that object hits the table, a life will be weighed against a kingdom. The man who entered was dressed in gray, not the gray of dust or mourning, but the gray of neutrality. He belonged to no one. In his hand, a small metal case gleamed faintly under the lamplight. "Franco," he said with the calmness of someone who had already crossed too many lines. "You've been busy." Franco's jaw tightened. "If you came to threaten me, you're late." "I didn't come to threaten you," the man said, setting the case on the table. "I came to collect what was promised." She froze. "Promised?" "Yes," he replied, looking directly at 72 hours. No blood, no interference, and then the exit. Franco's eyes darkened. "You made a deal with them," he said slowly. "You told me it was peace, not surrender." She met his gaze without blinking. "Peace is never free." The man opened the case. Inside lay a single document, a government contract marked with seals and signatures. "It's official," he said. "When this is signed, you disappear. New identity, new country. The past dies here." Franco stepped closer, scanning the lines of the document. "And if I refuse?" The man's expression didn't change. "Then the past doesn't die. You do." Silence. Only the faint hiss of rain returned. She moved between them. "If you love me, Franco, this is the moment you prove it. You said once I saved your soul. Let me save your life." His voice cracked for the first time. "And if my life is this, then you've already lost it," she whispered. The man extended the pen. The weight of it felt heavier than any weapon. Franco took it, then set it down again. "Not yet," he said. "Not until I know everything." The visitor hesitated. "Everything is already written." Franco shook his head. "Not the part where I find out who gave them access to my files, to my routes, to the Russians. Someone fed them information, and it wasn't Matteo." The man's eyes flickered. "Just once. Enough. She saw it too. It was you, she said. The visitor didn't deny it. We all serve something greater. Franco's hand moved like lightning. The gun was in his grip before the man could blink. The shot was deafening, final. The case fell to the floor, papers scattering like snow. He turned to her, breathing hard. There, he said. Now it's over. But she stepped back. No, Franco. You just ended your last chance at peace. The blood on the carpet spread slowly. The clock on the wall ticked louder, counting down the hours they didn't have left. That evening, she walked through the garden alone. The roses were wilted, heavy with rain, their scent thick with endings. Inside, his men burned documents, erased names, silenced ghosts. The world they had built was dissolving piece by piece. He found her near the fountain, the same place he had proposed years ago. Before power, before blood. She looked up when she felt his presence. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. This is still my home. For now, she answered. He reached out, tracing the air near her face, almost afraid to touch her. Do you regret it? Us? She smiled faintly. Regret is for people who didn't love enough. He looked toward the horizon where lights flickered from the docks, men moving, ships preparing, the future closing in. When they come, I'll make sure they take only me. She shook her head. They'll take what they always take, everything. He took her in his arms, resting his forehead against hers. Then let them take it. As long as you stay. I can't, she whispered. You promised them 72 hours. It ends tomorrow. Then let's steal one more night, he said. She didn't argue. They walked back to the mansion in silence, the sound of their steps like echoes of all they had been. Later, in the quiet of their room, he unbuttoned his cuffs and laid his gun on the nightstand, a gesture of surrender not to the world, but to her. She sat by the window brushing her hair, the moonlight tracing silver into silver. You never told me, he said, his voice almost a whisper. Why me? You could have had peace, safety, but you chose this, chose me. She looked over her shoulder, eyes soft and infinite. Because monsters need witness. He froze. And you stayed to watch? No, she said. To remind you that you were human once and that you could be again. He crossed the room, took her hand, and kissed her palm. Then promise me something. What? When this ends, don't look back. She nodded slowly. Only if you promise not to make me regret it. Outside, thunder rolled again, though the sky was clear. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of engines rumbled. Not ships this time. Cars. Too many. He looked out the window, his instincts sharpened by years of survival. They're early, she stood, her hand finding his. Then it's time. They walked down the stairs together, queen and king of a crumbling empire, ready to face the dawn that would rewrite them both. The convoy stopped at the gates, black cars, headlights like eyes of judgment. Inside the mansion, the staff was gone. Only silence remained, and the faint hum of electricity. She stood by the fireplace, the letter she had written folded in her pocket. He turned to her. I can still fight. She shook her head. You've fought enough. Let me finish what I started. Before he could protest, she pressed the letter into his hand. If they come for me, read this after. He looked down, then back at her. After what? The sound of boots echoed through the hall. She smiled sadly. After peace finds you. The doors burst open. Men in black poured in, shouting orders. She stepped forward before they could touch him. It's me you want, she said. Leave him. Franco froze. No. Yes, she said. You once told me you'd give me the world. Now give me this. The lead officer raised his weapon. Ma'am, please step back. Franco moved to shield her, but she turned and whispered, If you love me, let me do this. He stopped. The gunfire came in flashes of light, warning shots, commands shouted in chaos. She raised her hands, her voice cutting through the noise. I surrender! And then, silence. They took her away in the dawn, her figure small against the flood of gray light. He didn't follow. He couldn't. When the cars disappeared, the mansion was still again. The world outside was waking, but his had ended. He walked back inside, the letter trembling in his hands. He broke the seal. It read, "You once asked what love looks like after the fire. It looks like this, a woman walking into the storm so you don't have to. I've had my years, Franco. You still have time. Don't waste it trying to rebuild what was meant to end. Live somewhere they don't know your name. Somewhere you can be the man I saw the first night by the river. That's all I ever wanted." He pressed the paper to his chest. For the first time in his life, he knelt not in prayer, but in surrender. Outside, sunlight touched the roses, reviving them in quiet defiance. A new day began, one without her voice, but not without her love. And somewhere far away, in a guarded room, she closed her eyes and smiled, because she knew he would finally live. If this story moved you, share what you felt in the comments. Tell us what forgiveness means to you, and help us reach our first 100 hearts who believe that even in the darkest worlds, love still redeems. Subscribe and stay, because every ending hides another beginning waiting to be told.